figure out what your niche is and demonstrate yourself to be the expert at that, and you're likely to find success.
Hello and welcome to another titillating, nah, that's not the right word to use, is it? Fascinating, exciting episode of the Being an Engineer podcast. Today we've got Josh Zarecky, the Principal and Chief Engineer at ZEDion, formerly Z Services, where he leads the development of hybrid instrumentation that merges mechanical systems, embedded controls, and scientific automation. With earlier engineering roles at Prosolia and Beckman Coulter, Josh has over 15 years of experience in designing, prototyping, and delivering complex electromechanical systems for mass spectrometry, lab automation, and diagnostics. Passionate about solving tough technical challenges and balancing professional ambition with family-centered lifestyle, he founded ZEDion in 2019 and continues to build innovative solutions while embracing remote work and flexibility. Josh, thanks so much for being with us on the show today.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for the great intro.
I want to talk just real quickly about the remote work and flexibility. Are you still? I know that you took, I don't know if road trip is even the right word, but it was like a year long or 18 months on the road. Are you still doing that, or are you back in like an office at this point?
There are definitely days I wish I was still doing that. I'm in my home office, so we are still fully remote as a company. Everyone works from home, but I am no longer on the road as of about 2.5 years ago.
Got it. Okay. Well, we might dig into that a little bit more. And yeah, Pipeline, we were fully remote for the first 10 years of our existence as well. Okay. And man, that was a great way to keep overhead down for sure. All right. Well, let's start with the first question that I ask everyone. What made you decide to become an engineer?
Oh, to become an engineer. My grandfather was an engineer, ran a machine shop. My dad and my uncle worked at that machine shop. And my dad's still a machinist. I kind of grew up around machining and building and design, and it was just kind of innate to my childhood. And I don't know, it made sense. I never really thought of doing anything else.
Beautiful. Were you into Legos growing up? Or, I mean, you sounds like you had already graduated from like that level. If you were working around your grandfather and like machines and that sort of thing.
I mean, certainly I loved Legos. In fact, Lego Mindstorms was probably my introduction to controls and, very, very basic early ladder logic and programming, as well as, of course, the building. Me and a buddy of mine had Lego Mindstorms in middle school, I guess, by about that time period. We would build battle bots with little remote controllers, and whoever's had the fewest pieces fall off survived, one kind of scenario. But yeah, I mean, from building trebuchets to help my dad work in the car to, just ridiculous things with wood and fireworks and, whatever else I can come up with to, just build it, test it, and have fun with it.
Wood is a great medium to start with, isn't it? It's soft enough that it's not that hard to work with, but still rigid enough that you can build like structural, structures.
Yeah. No, wood is great. And there's something, forgiving, but also, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. It's enjoyable. You can work with wood and, make mistakes and create new things, and a lot easier than you can with metal or even plastics in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, in 2019, you started Z Services, now ZEDion. What was the impetus for going out on your own?
My job ended. The company I was working for sold their IP to Waters Corporation, and they exited the market. And so I was already moonlighting, doing just some side design work and consulting for industrial equipment, and decided to give it a go. At the time, my daughter was about 1. worked from home for a while, ended up getting an office in Indy. And then, as you brought up earlier, we kind of decided I had all this great flexibility and it was working out so far. We sold our house and bought a fifth wheel and spent the next year and a half traveling the U.S. and working from the road.
All right, let's talk about that. That is not something that most people have done. In fact, I'd say it's something that very, very few people have done. What was how did you decide to make that move? And then what were a few maybe surprises along the way? And what were some of the things that you enjoyed most about that time?
Why did we do it? That's probably a multifaceted question. I'm not really sure I could wholly answer. Lifelong travel bug. I've sat in one place for too long. Indianapolis was great. I've been in a house for a long time. Just wanted to get out. And working remote and being self-employed made it possible. So kind of just went for it. Literally we sold our house and the new owners were there at the end of the driveway and we're still loading the last few things into the RV. Everything else is in storage and we pulled out and really had no plans. Generally, we started off going to visit some family and it was around Christmas time. But beyond that, we made it up as we went. A week here, 2 weeks there, a year and a half, 10,000 miles, and I don't know exactly how many states later. It's great. Challenges or surprises. RV park internet is not really a thing. And I do still, Teams meetings and Zoom meetings and email and all of that. Ended up getting Starlink, which, is great. The internet quality, as long as there's not tree cover, was great. And that really enabled me to expand and do a lot more. Shortly before heading out on the road, I had hired my first part-time employee. And so I do a lot of 3D printing. We have Markforged 3D printers. And I gave him my 3D printer and said, okay, now you're doing the 3D printing for us. I don't have room for it in the RV. And it worked out pretty well. And I think actually while we were on the road, I ended up taking him from part-time to full-time. The other, I guess, real challenge, and this is a true challenge for remote work in general, especially for the kind of work that we do. We're building instrumentation, embedded hardware, integration of OEM components and whatnot. I don't have a lot of space in an RV. He does some stuff at his house. When I do need things, where do I get it shipped to? I have a business address, but if you ship it there, it's never going to get to me. So, every time I need to order something, I'm putting in a new campground address or a local UPS store. So logistics was probably one of the unforeseen challenges, aside from internet. But the, excuse me, the rewarding side of it was the mountains and rivers that I got to sit at a picnic table alongside. And, I distinctly remember City of Rock State Park in New Mexico with a generator running on one side and Starlink on the other side and trying to, log into a Zoom meeting, a weekly meeting that I always have, but just the image of that place and, those experiences and, to the family centric side of things, it was at a time and an age for our child that she wasn't in school yet. And we got to do all of that while we could. And I would go back on the road before I would go back on having done it at all.
From motors and robotics to controls, automation, and precision prototyping, Simutech brings ANSYS simulation tools and expert insight directly to your team. We help you accelerate design, reduce risk, and eliminate costly rework.
Validate before you fabricate. Simutech Group helps you simulate thermal stress, vibration, fluid flow, electronics cooling, electromagnetic performance, you name it.
Whether you're in automotive, aerospace, energy, industrial automation, or the next big thing, Simutech partners with innovators to deliver simulation-driven results that move products forward. Build smarter machines, launch stronger products, scale faster with Simutech's simulation support by your side.
Simutech Group, your engineering partner in motion. Visit simutechgroup.com and let's power up your next design.
That sounds magical. I mean, listening to you describe that just fills me with this sense of awe and longing to be free and on the road. And I'm sure, like you mentioned, there are logistical challenges and things like that. But man, what a great experience that must have been. Something your family will never forget.
It was, for sure. All that being said, I've been more successful at growing the business and, focusing on work being settled. They're I wouldn't say it got a back burner, but, certainly it was challenging to really grow and space limitations to really dedicate time to work.
Yeah. Yep. Prior to starting ZED Services /Ion, I should explain that, right? Josh recently rebranded ZED Services to ZEDion, and that's why I'm going back and forth here. But prior to that, you had some experience leading hardware teams. How did the leadership experience you had working at other companies translate to leading a growing team at ZED?
I'm actually not sure. I would really say I've led a lot of teams prior to ZED. Coming out of school, working at Beckman Coulter, I got to be a part of great teams. I certainly had leadership roles in, some of the projects, I suppose, but certainly wasn't driving a core team of multiple disciplines. Beckman Coulter is a really big multinational company. Step forward to Prosolia, I was employee number 6. At the time when I first joined, I was the entirety of the engineering department. And service department and support for manufacturing and quality systems. And we ended up having 3 or 4 engineers, and the VP of engineering, who was an analytical chemist. So, certainly not an engineer. And there's an element of, I'm leading, because I have the experience, but certainly leading the diversity of the projects that we do today was a trial by fire. But I think I was well prepared for it coming out of Prosolia. And, I wasn't just an engineering team member or, person. I really got to see all of the other aspects of business, from standing up a quality system to sales and service and manufacturing support and, the entire product development life cycle, from requirements through verification and validation, everything in between. So wearing lots of hats and seeing all aspects of the process is really what prepared me for going off on my own and now leading projects for other companies.
Looking back on that experience, is there, let's have you pick one or the other, but not both for time reasons. Was there a success story or a failure that you learned something from that stands out to you in particular?
I'm going to go way, way back. And I recently posted about this on LinkedIn, so it's really fresh in my mind. I was conducting a CAPA investigation, so corrective and preventative action, on failures in a system. And it was ultimately a success. It was about a year-long process. And what I learned from it is systematic and methodical methodologies and processes for investigating failures, and really learning what the definition of a root cause is and how to verify root cause and verify changes by understanding all of the variables well enough to be able to selectively cause failure and then turn it off. So I would call it a success because we did resolve the issue, but it is through the process of extensive and repeated failure that I had the opportunities to learn before it became a success.
Yeah, that's great. You talked about some of the methodologies that you picked up. Are those methodologies that are like formal, established methodologies that have a name and you can just share what they were?
I mean, fundamentally, I suppose it's like a design of experiments. But it was really more about breaking it down. So no, you can do tolerance analysis and stack up analysis. You can measure parts. You can do functional testing. You can do statistical analyses. It's when you bring it all together and control one variable at a time to see what the changes and the outcomes are. That is what makes it systematic and methodical.
Got it. Great. Okay. Let's switch gears just a little bit and talk about the ZEDion Rail. Tell us a little bit about what it is and the impact it's having in the industry.
Yeah. So ZEDion being the company, so we're developing what we're calling the Flex Rail, which is a modular kind of industrial automation platform. Not too much unlike your modular, your pneumatic and control systems. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name off the top of my head.
Easy Motion.
Easy Motion.
Thank you for the plug there.
Yeah, absolutely. While yours is kind of a PLC-based system, ours is more at the embedded edge. So think industrial Arduino, less the need to have electrical engineering experience to design stepper drivers and design, whatever it is that you're trying to do with an Arduino, and you got all these breadboard wires and everything everywhere. It is a modular backplane, and we have designed a series of different modules that you can plug in any configuration, and it'll self-identify in the firmware, and there's some configuration you can do. But it takes all of the electrical engineering out of the way and makes it just a coding exercise. Long term, we're hoping to get rid of that coding exercise and come up with some sort of user interface for configuration and control. But the idea is, one of the longest lead times in most development projects is electronics design. And embedded controls takes time, takes expertise, and a lot of times it's you're doing the same things, you're just tailoring it to a specific project. So our idea is we can accelerate development and de-risk development by plugging in what's appropriate for your two motors and one pump, and set up the firmware, and we can run go right into testing without spending the upfront time needed to develop those electronics.
Yeah. We are trying to do a very similar thing with Easy Motion. Not everyone on the team, in fact, most of us don't program, but we need to program in order to create motion, especially as we're developing new manufacturing processes. So Easy Motion was our answer to doing that. What were some of the challenges that you guys encountered as you were developing the ZEDion Rail?
We're still facing challenges. It's still a work in progress. So it's based on, currently 24 volt DC power coming in, and then we have power distribution for 12, 5, and 3 volts. So all modules can accept all voltages. And then we've tried to design it to be as flexible as possible. So if you plug in a 24 volt or a 12 volt motor, it's just a matter of configuration and code to say, hey, I'm going to use this output, or I'm going to, toggle this. So the biggest challenge is trying to account for, kind of going back to root cause stuff, excuse me, all of the possible variables and permutations of the applications that it could be used for, such that you can quickly and easily adapt to different operating conditions and different use cases.
The Product Development Expo, or PDX, is your chance to learn from subject matter experts providing practical, hands-on training for dozens of different engineering topics. GD&T, Advanced Surface Modeling, DFM, Plating and Finishing Techniques, Programming Robots, Adhesive Dispensing, Prototyping Tips and Tricks, and lots more. PDX happens October 21st and 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Learn more at pdexpo.engineer. That's pdexpo.engineer. To what degree has striking the right balance between ease of use for the user and flexibility and powerfulness of the system capability been a challenge during this development?
So currently, I think the idea is the focus on the electronics end. And that is where we feel that we can provide the most value by, taking away the need to develop the modules, the shields, if you will, that would plug into the board. So that's where our focus has been. So the challenge still lies on the code and the firmware side. And the reason our focus has been there is, I think, generally speaking, my 10-year-old nephew is writing his own video game. Learning to code and, working in an IDE is a lot more accessible to people than developing the specific, circuitry for stepper drivers or signal isolation and to prevent, shorting a ground to something else. All of the engineering that's required is in electronics. So that's been the challenge of trying to make all of that as foolproof as possible.
Nice.
While still keeping it open-ended and flexible for the user.
Yeah, that makes sense. Going beyond just ZEDion Rail, what are some of the tools that you and your team use most often for your engineering?
So we are, I'm a mechanical engineer. So, first and foremost is Autodesk Inventor, which I know is, I think it's a great tool. We can debate sometime about SolidWorks and all the other platforms out there. We at one point did support SolidWorks and Inventor, but we've just migrated straight to Inventor, and that seems to be the preference. For electronics design, we are using Altium. We use Upchain, which is a cloud-based PDM, product data management platform that allows us to have check-in, check-out controls, revision controls, change orders, and we're working on expanding it because it's very, developable. We're trying to build at least ISO 9001 compliant quality system around using Upchain. So we could manage requirements and verification and change requests from people and stuff like that. Those are the three core tools. Because we are a fully distributed, all remote team. We use Microsoft Teams. That's how we stay connected. I'm trying to think of some other tools we use. Markforged 3D printers. We do a lot of 3D printing, both for prototyping as well as for production going into products.
We use some of the same tools. We love the Markforged 3D printers. Those are great. We've got 2 desktop units. We've found that there's a massive difference in price between the desktop units and their industrial printers. And Massive. Yeah. I don't really understand it.
And we use, I call it industrial 3D printing because I think the end result is certainly a level above a PLA printed part on, a Prusa or something. But yeah, we have 4 desktop units.
Yeah, and they have two. This isn't a podcast about Markforged, although we have had them on. We actually had Greg Mark on, the founder of Markforged.
Oh, okay.
He was really interesting. But I really do love the Markforged printers, and there are two desktop units for anyone out there who's interested in this. There's the Onyx One, which it's been a while since we bought ours, but it was pretty affordable, like maybe $4,000 or something like that when we bought it. And then there's the Mark II, which adds the capability to print with continuous carbon fiber. And that was a little bit more pricey. I want to say it was like $20,000 for
and
that.
I hate to burst your bubble, unfortunately.
Uh-oh.
And I'm going to look it up quickly here to see if I'm right, but I believe they have discontinued the Onyx One. Which means their like entry level price point is now 10 plus, I believe.
Oh, that's too bad. The Onyx One, that's our workhorse, man. We use that thing all the time.
And I have one Mark II, which is actually the first one I bought. But honestly, I haven't. They have the Onyx Pro now, which I think. But yeah, they've gotten rid of the Onyx One, so it's a higher price point, unfortunately. But I haven't used the reinforced carbon fiber very much. Maybe once or twice, mostly for fun. But the material itself is, it's great.
Yeah, same with us.
Not to plug Markforged anymore, but I'm really happy with it.
Same with us. Yeah, we almost never use the continuous carbon fiber. It's just we don't need it because the Onyx material, that chopped carbon fiber nylon, is already pretty stout by itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, and I put parts into for production into sold products.
Yeah. Yep.
And so far not had any issues.
Same here. Remind me, which AutoCAD product are you using?
Inventor.
Okay. So I'm curious about this. Not that I have like strong opinions one way or the other, really. I'm not a SolidWorks fanboy. We use SolidWorks, as do many companies.
As do the vast majority of the industry.
Yeah. So what eventually steered you guys more towards Inventor? Just out of curiosity.
I suppose at an underlying level is personal preference. I have used Creo as well extensively. SolidWorks extensively, and then my moonlighting gig at the end of my tenure at Prosolia before starting ZEDion, was an Inventor. And I have been I'm happier with the overall workflows. I think there's a lot of nuanced things from holes management to drawings that I find better. Material libraries, some of the other add-in tools I find easier to work with. My biggest complaint and why I don't really, and I sometimes speak up, I'm not a fan of SolidWorks. I find it to be extremely resource intensive. It causes itself and computers to crash more frequently, and I find it doesn't handle large assemblies well.
Have you tried Onshape? I
have not. I was very happy with Creo, or PTC's industrial product, I guess, versus Onshape, which is PTC's, analogy to Fusion. I have generally heard really good things about Onshape, with the one caveat that because it's available for free, if you're not paying for it, your work is part of like a public database,
which I think is brilliant. From a business, a marketing standpoint, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it drives people to want to buy it. I get that. Absolutely. And for hobbyists, it's a great way to go.
I think it's totally fair too, right? Like you're not paying anything for this. And so the caveat is your files are in a public domain that technically, theoretically, someone else could go find. Okay. That seems like a fair trade-off.
It totally does. I think where it's challenging for some people, and so I have one colleague that uses it on occasion, but doesn't use enough CAD to justify the cost of buying it. Mm-hmm. So that there's that trade-off scenario.
Yeah. Yep. I'm not a fan. How do I say this? I kind of am a fanboy a little bit of Onshape. I don't really even use it. We have a volunteer program, CAD Club, and we use it there to teach these kids how to use CAD, just because it's so easy there is no installation, right? It's not easy to install. There is no installation. It's all cloud-based, and it runs on any old crummy public school issued laptop. So it works well for that environment. And that's really the only, formal exposure I have to it, but I've gotten to know it a little bit there. And I really love everything I've seen. The version controlling, the histories they have, the collaborative work environment where two people in different locations can edit the same part at the same time,
really?
like a Google Doc. Yeah. Some really cool
things.
In
the interest of bringing CAD, parametric modeling, design, all of that stuff to the next generation, I am 100% for it. My take being from my own business perspective, like I wouldn't use it, unless I was paying for it because of the open domain scenario.
Of course. Yeah.
But for kids, as young as you can through high school, and I think your CAD Club is really a great program. If I was closer, I would come help when I could. But yeah, I think it's great. And I think opening up to the masses is really a great thing that they're doing.
Yeah. All right. Well, usually I somewhere in the middle do a little plug for Pipeline, but I'm not going to do that today. Today, I'm just going to say pdexpo.engineer. Go there, register. We want to see you. pdexpo.engineer. This October, we want to see you there. So go there, check it out, register, and come visit in Phoenix. All right. So moving on. Josh, what are some of the challenges you've had specifically within a leadership context, managing a remote team? And how have you found ways to resolve those challenges?
Yeah. Certainly it starts to feel siloed. And we meet, we have a once a week team meeting. We have some one-on-ones throughout the week, but in general, it's kind of, it requires the people on the team to be kind of go-getters and self-driven. There's no hand-holding. There's no looking over your shoulder to see what's going on. Fortunately, we're in an age of collaborative technologies and, the internet where I can get a message on Teams. Hey, you're free to chat. I got some questions. We can share screen. We can rotate CAD models. We can take control and work through things. So, 20 years ago, it would have been a whole lot more difficult. The biggest hurdle is the physical hardware. Now, I work in my garage. I have a pretty decent space set up in my garage. I'm fortunate, one of our employees has an entire electronics lab he's built. He has all the oscilloscopes and everything he has that he had kind of for the most part before coming to me. That's his passion. And then our other mechanical engineer, he's got an office space. He's got a workbench. We have it built up, and I as the owner, the employer, make an effort to ask people what they need. I recently bought a new stool for his workbench, or I'll buy, a tool that he's lacking, or, things you would expect to have in an office space. So if you're lacking something, you need something, a new headset, your mouse went out. Like I make an effort to fill those gaps for people, because I can't see it. I'm not there. And then the biggest hurdle, going with hardware is I pay a lot more in shipping than you probably do, for the day to day, trying to collaborate, or, if I have the physical hardware here and I got to get the electronics shipped to me so I can put it in and test it, and then I have to ship it to the customer. So I keep FedEx busy.
It's funny you mentioned that. I remember that being a challenge that we had as well back before we were in offices. Everyone worked remotely out of a home office, and we had this, we still work actually with this local courier service. And man, we kept them so busy. Like, we probably sent this guy's kids to college through all the different couriers that we sent around the valley here in Phoenix. But it seemed like, I don't know, multiple times per week, if not daily, we were scheduling a courier to pick up some printed parts from my house and drop it off at another engineer's house or to a customer or something like that. And that was a pretty good way to go because it was same day delivery, right? For like $15 or something. That worked out pretty well.
We did a lot of courier at Prosolia around town to different vendors and people that we were working with. You know, I'm fortunate that most of our equipment we work with, while complex in terms of what's going on inside or, you know, scope of the bill of materials, if you will, are not large in size. So whereas pipeline is doing a lot of large extrusion assemblies, I'm guessing you work with a freight carrier regularly.
Yeah.
For shipping your systems. Not a problem I've had to deal with.
Yeah, we have to crate our things up and have a big semi come in and pick things up. Not a semi, but, you know, a bigger truck.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of the equipment that you guys build, let's talk about that a little bit more because you guys operate in a pretty specific niche. Tell us about that.
And that's the transition to Ion, you know, is, you know, when I started as ZED Services, you know, general engineering services, you know, there are dime a dozen out there, you know, engineering companies. So the transition to Ion specifically aligns with where the core of my background is, which is mass spectrometry. And even more specific than that, ionization sources. So we're taking a sample, whether it be from blood or on a surface of something, somehow extracting those surface chemistries and ionizing them for analysis by the mass spectrometer. So prior work history, all working with ion sources and mass spectrometers. Been really fortunate to continue working in that space with two different clients, developing ion sources. But more specifically then, in terms of our work, we're trying to focus in on analytical and life science instrumentation, automating chemical workflows, integrating custom detection systems and fluidic systems that get from, you know, sample source through pre-treatment, filtering, heating, whatever the case may be, to the detector, and then waste management. So we've done work with polymers manufacturing for intrinsic viscometer for measuring viscosity. We're working on a system that's a kind of a laser-based imaging system that's measuring Brownian motion or tracking Brownian motion to characterize particles. You know, I will often tell people if you have a workflow, a process, a series of steps and components that make up whatever it is you're trying to work, we can design a system to integrate it, automate it, and market it. Well, we don't do the marketing, but we'll bring it to the point that you can sell it.
Beautiful. You mentioned that general engineering services, dime a dozen. There are a lot of them out there, right? And I don't disagree yet. Nevertheless, there are engineers out there who are very interested in doing their own thing, right? Not working at a company, just starting their own thing, freelancing, maybe even hiring a few people, building up a product development or engineering company. What advice would you share with engineers out there who are considering making that leap?
Man, I'd say do it. You know, the biggest thing is to not be afraid to fail a little bit and flounder a little bit. You know, to the dime a dozen scenario, and I've seen different schools of thought on this. You know, one is diversify. You know, be able to do all of the things that then you can help anybody, but you don't stand out. The avenue I am now pursuing is narrowing focus and becoming an expert at something, whatever that is, whatever your something is. If you can become that expert, then you'll have to spend less time fighting to find work and more time people seeking you out because you're the expert. At least that's the theory I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
So, the advice side is figure out what your niche is and, demonstrate yourself to be the expert at that, and you're likely to find success.
What's your take on products versus services? I've always been of the mind that services it's good, like there's pretty low barrier to entry, so it's not difficult to like start up a services company, but it's hard to be consistently profitable if you're just doing services. Whereas products, they come with their own bag of challenges, right? You have to figure out the right product, the right product market fit. And then there's all marketing and sales that goes along with that as well. But once you have an established product, then you're just, churning and burning, right? Repeating the same thing.
And that is, part of the mindset around the FlexRail, developing a product that could help support and garner work for our services. This is actually a conversation I've had a number of times recently, because the longer I do what I'm doing, the better I get at it. The more efficient I get, the higher quality outputs are, but the less time it takes me to do it, the less money I actually make, because we're generally operating on an hourly basis.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword scenario where the product, hopefully there's only one way to go, and that's up with decreasing effort over time, minus support and, manufacturing, scaling, and all of that. So there is probably an opportunity for balance. That's probably true of everything in life. But another thing I'm trying to work on for the services side, which is extremely difficult on wide scope projects with a lot of unknowns, is figuring out a path to value-based or fixed bid pricing. It sounds great in theory. It's not necessarily easy to implement, but it's something we're working on.
Do your customers generally push back on fixed price projects and prefer time and materials?
It's a risk thing. Frankly, time and materials puts all of the risk on the customer. If I hit a snag or do something wrong and fail and we have to redo something, they're still paying time and materials. I haven't committed to, being perfect and human, or inhuman rather. Whereas with a fixed bid, generally speaking, it's probably going to be a fair bit higher than maybe the range of estimates might be for time and materials, which is, why they would push back. But I take all the risk. So it's on me to make sure it's well scoped. It's on me to make sure requirements and acceptance criteria are well established. That way, when I say I'm done and they say, well, actually, I want this, that, and the other, it's not just this never-ending cycle of iteration.
Yeah.
It's currently, so I'll say this. Existing clients don't want to shift. They're happy with time materials. Going into new projects, I'm trying to push the fix, or at least I'm evaluating other ways to potentially do it. I'm looking at retainer structures. I'm kind of shotgunning. I'm trying different things with different people and scaling it to what their project is. Which is another thing we've been working on, which is, dubbed the modulus. And the idea being we modulate our services and what it is we're doing to meet you where you are and get you where you need to go. So if you bring, really well scoped project with requirements, I don't have to spend effort on that. And if you only want to get to a proof of concept, I'm not quoting you full design history file. So, we're trying to better tailor and better scope so that we can offer more value and potentially see more upside value on our end.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you one more question, and then we will wrap things up here. What is one thing that you've done to accelerate the speed of engineering?
Well, I'm going to have to say FlexRail at this juncture.
Okay.
At least, for future projects, it has the potential to expedite integration and automation of electromechanical systems.
So if I were to generalize that statement, because not everyone has a FlexRail, it's building a tool that handles what would have been otherwise repetitive, time-consuming tasks, and the tool just kind of automates.
Or even more, it's a plug-and-play platform that different motors or pumps or sensors can be plugged into, and we've taken care of the electrical engineering to get from your sample or your signal to the data or control path that you need to get there. We're shortcutting and taking out the engineering block in the middle to get there.
Yeah, terrific. All right. Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining us today on the show. Been super fun to chat with you, learn more about your business and your experience and background. Anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to share before we sign off?
No, it's been great, Aaron. I really appreciate it. And I'd be happy to, talk for a couple more hours.
Awesome.
It's been great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Josh.
All right. Take care.
I'm Aaron Moncur, founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. If you liked what you heard today, please share the episode. To learn how your team can leverage our team's expertise developing advanced manufacturing processes, automated machines, and custom fixtures, complemented with product design and R&D services, visit us at teampipeline.us. To join a vibrant community of engineers online, visit thewave.engineer. Thank you for listening.